Welcome everyone to our second session today. This is on our long-running session at this meeting on the federal agency opportunities, both for funding and for other data science activities nationally. We're very happy to have four great panelists with us today from multiple agencies at the federal level. We have Dr. Laura Biven from NIH in the Office of Data Science Strategy. We have Dr. Martin Halbert from NSF in OAC, who's the Science Advisor for Public Access. We have Dr. Ashley Sands from the Institute for Museum and Library Services. And Dr. Ann Stapleton from the USDA National Institute for Food and Agriculture, who has also worked in other agencies as well. So we're glad to have all of your expertise at the federal level on this panel today. I will go ahead and turn this over to Dr. Biven to lead us off here today, but we're basically going to learn about the federal agency opportunities for funding around data science activities. So there's lots of other federal programs around data science and data management that we may be able to talk about today. We're very interested in how to build capacity within the region for institutions that may not have large and robust sponsored research offices. And so we can hopefully get some insights from the panelists about opportunities to help build that capacity as well. And we'll have time for audience questions and comments as well. So go ahead, Laura, whenever you're ready.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. I'm really pleased to be joining this group and wonderful to be talking with this Midwest Big Data Hub. I grew up there, so really nice to reconnect with the Midwest. So I'm just going to quickly run through a couple of things that I thought are important. And the first one is I always think it's a nice idea to try and do a bit of a mind meld with the funding office. And so that's what my first couple of slides are trying to do, is just to show you sort of how we think about data science at NIH. And the first thing to note is that we actually have an NIH-wide strategic plan for data science. So this means that we have a coordinated effort and goals around data science across the different institutes, 27 different institutes and centers at NIH. And it is it's actually the remit of our office, the Office of Data Science Strategy, to coordinate the implementation of this strategic plan. And the strategic plan focuses on creating a modernized and integrated, fair, findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable biomedical data ecosystem. And we do this with strategic investments around infrastructure, around ecosystem data services to knit together a data ecosystem, tools and analytics, community engagement, and workforce development. And in a little bit more detail, this is how we sort of parse different activities across these different goals. We have efforts, quite significant efforts at NIH around moving data into the cloud, commercial cloud, and building tools and services around those key data assets. And so a lot of our work right now is on not only preparing the data so that the data are interoperable, but also preparing the way that we manage those cloud services to make the services themselves interoperable, to enable workflows across those different cloud assets. And I'm going to talk a little bit about AI and machine learning because not only because that is a sort of an administration priority right now and a place where there's a lot of, I would say, kind of exponential growth in interest, but also because many of these, the points that I'll make in the context of AI are actually much broader and apply to big data and big data science in general. So the first thing to realize is that, you have your finger on the pulse because there's the prediction of huge growth in the amount of data that will be available to that will be created and then be made available to researchers in the very near future. And so many of the computing architectures and the cloud service architectures that are driving that in all different sectors across the economy are also going to be helpful for biomedicine. So here's sort of some of our visions for the future. So AI is being integrated into every part of our society, and it has a huge potential also in biomedicine and in health to improve the way that we interact with patients and the way that we collect data and the way that we think about health interventions. And the thinking is that we want to go past just thinking about correlations and really thinking about how to infer models, data from this data-driven approach. And some of the efforts along those lines are in things that you will have heard about around explainable AI. So making sure that we really understand how artificial forms of intelligence can interface with human forms of intelligence. And so thinking about how to facilitate some of these interfaces is really around the semantics of data, for example, and around how we can interpret data for both humans and machines. And then finally, I'll say one of the sort of grand challenges, I think, in this data-driven approach, at least in the health context, is understanding where the biases are and understanding how to apply artificial intelligence and machine learning to the very diverse populations across the US. So let me just talk a little bit about how we're addressing some of those opportunities. And they're really centered around three areas: data, people, and ethics. And I want to call out just a couple of flagship activities at NIH, in particular in the area of artificial intelligence, but I think these are driving a lot of our thinking more broadly in data science. The Bridge to AI activity is a flagship activity in artificial intelligence for NIH. And the goal here is to think sort of from a fundamental conceptual point of view, what data streams and data resources do you need in order to drive data-driven discovery with AI and machine learning around grand challenges in biomedicine? And so the result of this program will be flagship data assets that can be used for AI and machine learning to drive this sort of data-driven discovery around really grand challenges in biomedicine. And along the way, they're putting in place sort of cross-cutting themes so that we can really understand and how, what the challenges are around making data AI and machine learning ready, around teaming arrangements between these different interdisciplinary groups, around ethics, and in particular around training. Another flagship initiative for NIH in artificial intelligence is the AIM Ahead program, the Artificial Intelligence and Machine Learning Consortium to Advance Health Equity and Researcher Diversity. The way I explain this program is that it's really focused on making sure that the benefits of AI and machine learning are felt broadly across the different populations in the US. And the way that we're doing that is we're bringing communities together to make sure that the data sets that are used for AI and machine learning are more diverse, and also to make sure that we are growing a more diverse leadership in AI and machine learning so that we have more diverse points of view asking questions of those data. And we're beginning with electronic health record data and also a focus on health disparities and health equality research. This program has just been launched, and so I expect that there will be opportunities to join this consortium in the very near future, and it would be wonderful to have participation from across the US. There are also much smaller efforts, but I think quite impactful ones led out of our office, the Office of Data Science Strategy. And these are focused on some of the fundamental workforce needs, innovation in ethics around biomedicine and AI, and also improving the support for our researchers to make their data AI and machine learning ready. And then finally, a couple of programs where I think there's an annual cadence to these programs and there's an opportunity to participate. One of them is our Data Scholars Program. And this is an opportunity for experts in data science to come and spend 1 to 2 years at NIH, helping us with some of our big problems in data science. And so it's an opportunity for us to get outside expertise embedded into some of our research programs, and also an opportunity for the scholars themselves to come and learn about federal government and learn about some of the challenges that NIH is facing. We have a similar program for earlier stage students, and this is the Coding It Forward Civic Digital Fellows program. And this brings students into NIH for 10 weeks during the year, and they do amazing projects, and they're helpful to the NIH beyond their years. This is a wonderful program that gives experience to students gives an opportunity for students to, flex their computing skills in the federal environment, and also has huge benefit to NIH. And we also provide data science boot camps for teachers. And so this is really trying to make sure that we are able to reach many more students, sort of scale up in terms of our reach by working with teachers to help them be good educators in data science. And with that, I hope I haven't overrun my time, but thank you very much for the opportunity.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Laura. And those programs are really well aligned with our communities and the work that we do here. And so we're happy to help communicate those to the broader regional community that we have. Thanks very much for that. Up next, we will have Dr. Martin Halbert from NSF.
Hi, John. Thank you so much. I thought that I would keep this actually just sort of conversational and try to personalize our programs just a bit and reserve most of my time for the Q&A and answering questions that you may have. And I guess my first and biggest admonition is don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to contact us, program officers at NSF in particular areas, and ask for more details. Let me first say just a few overarching comments about data and data science and its centrality these days to NSF and NSF programs in general. Then let me speak to just a few sort of example programs within the office that I am situated within NSF, which is a cross-cutting program, the Office of Advanced Cyber Infrastructure. And then finally, just to say a few words about my own program and invite anybody that would like more information to contact me. Data and data science have really become central to most, if not all, scientific inquiry these days. Laura, I loved your slides. They were beautiful. They perfectly portrayed the big high-level vision of the importance and sort of relationships of data science and data in so many different areas. NSF is, of course, an agency that serves all the different branches of science and engineering. So as you consider programs that are at your institution that may be targeting or seeking to advance some area of either infrastructure or data science, consider it both from the disciplinary perspective and from a cross-cutting perspective. Would be the first thing I would say. Another general comment that is in particular reference to this panel is that NSF is keenly aware of needs within underserved institutions and institutional contexts for support for infrastructural development. For MSIs and HBCUs, we are actually thinking very carefully about possibilities for upcoming programs and to build in sort of explicit support or more explicit support, let's say, for underserved institutions in all of our programs. And I will give you just a couple of examples today. What I thought I would do actually to demystify the process, because I know from before I joined NSF, it can be it's a big opaque organization without a lot of ability for people to understand the different parts of it. So I thought I would just start with the office that I am within and just start with the websites so that this stuff does not come across as somehow distant or opaque, but rather, comprised of real people that are here to serve you. The Office of Advanced Cyber Infrastructure grew out of the acknowledgement a number of years ago that cyber infrastructure, or simply the infrastructure of computing and networked systems that supports all the different branches of science, had become central to the conduct of science, and that we as an agency needed to start thinking more holistically and in a cross-cutting way across different disciplinary contexts. So just simply the Office of Cyber Infrastructure was created, and then situated within the SISE Directorate, Computer and Information Science and Engineering. Now, while we are within SISE, let me hasten to add, we are extremely interdisciplinary. We have connections and support programs all over the agency. Let me just narrate some of our programs by introducing you virtually to some of the program officers, and again, reassuring you that you can contact us. While we are extremely busy, that's our job. We're interested in talking to people. Let me narrate just a few of these programs and talk about the program officers that coordinate them. Dr. Thompson, Kevin Thompson, he obviously, all of us are involved in multiple programs, but I would particularly call out this one within his portfolio, the Campus Cyber Infrastructure Program, which addresses these needs at the campus level for cyber infrastructural development. And again, we are keenly interested in underserved institutional, program proposals these days. Other areas that, or other program officers that I'd like to introduce you to, Dr. Tefek Kosar. He is one of our colleagues that particularly works on perhaps larger scale and more interinstitutional contexts. In particular, this one, the Cyber Infrastructure for Sustained Scientific Innovation Program, CSSI, which is there to undertake advances and transforming advances in, advances within disciplinary contexts that support different programs across the agency. So we do these programs in cooperation with other parts of NSF. It is, again, a program which is, looking at interdisciplinary options and so forth. Just trying to move as quickly as I can here. Dr. Amy Walton, she has, historically been very instrumental in not only the prior long-term competition of the EarthCube program, but also the ongoing Harnessing the Data Revolution Institutes program, which is squarely in the space of data and data science. Sort of one of the main bread and butter programs of the OAC. Finally, I just want to highlight Dr. Sussman. Alan Sussman's program areas include many training and data science preparation programs, in particular one that I will call out. All of these, of course, just examples, but exemplars that I want you to know about is the training-based workforce development for advanced cyber infrastructure, or simply cyber training program. Where we are very aware, Alan is keenly interested in the way that this profession of data science is evolving and what we can do in NSF to support it. With that, let me just say a couple of words to conclude about my program, the Public Access Initiative. Let me see if I can get this into presentation mode, and then I'll wrap up, John, so you can go to the next person. We were created as a result of the 2013 Holden Memorandum from the Office of Science and Technology Policy in the White House. It is our agency-wide program that responds to the government commitment to provide public access to the outputs of scientific research. And so we look at all the different life cycle components of providing access publicly to scientific results and outputs. Just a couple, because I'm short of time. We run the NSF Public Access Repository, and we are extending this year to include access to data sets. This is just an arc of that program, that the PAR's development in coming years. And the final thing I wanted to just highlight is that we fund a variety of different programs. We oversee the National Big Data Hubs. Of course, the Midwest Hub is one of our exemplar programs, but I also on a regular basis fund exploratory research projects that are early concept research in areas of data access. In particular these days, I'm very interested in those. Again, if you have any interest in any of this as a follow-up, please do contact me, and I'm happy to, in the Q&A portion of this program, to answer any questions about anything that I've discussed. Thank you.
Great. Thanks very much, Martin. And thank you for putting some names and faces to folks who are very relevant to this audience and this community. It can definitely be intimidating for folks who have not had a lot of experience with NSF to know who to go to, what directorate is relevant. And so great to have those initial touch points, and would definitely encourage folks to reach out to those program officers with questions and ideas for projects.
I would also be remiss if I didn't introduce, I believe my colleague Al Suarez is on the call. And Al, if you want to just turn your camera on and say hello for a moment, just to let them know that there's another NSF program officer on here to answer questions. And Al is very involved in everything in the OAC.
Thanks, Martin. Happy to be here. And happy to answer any questions that folks may have.
Great. Thanks very much for being here. All right, next up we have Dr. Ashley Sands from the Institute of Museum and Library Services, who I'm happy to welcome back to this panel. She was on our very last in-person event that we held in 2019 before the pandemic. I believe that she joined remotely to that session, and so that was a good lead into having her join today. Thanks for being here.
Yes, it's nice to be able to be back. Unfortunately, I kicked off that trend of starting to do everything and virtually, but it's nice to see everybody here. I see a couple familiar names, and so this is great. Well, I'll start just by echoing what I've already heard some of my federal colleagues mention, which pretty much is call us, email us. If you have an idea that you think might be a great option for a funding, get in touch with us sooner rather than later. Obviously, it's our job to know inside and out exactly what the calls are, exactly what would make something more or less competitive for a particular program. So if you contact us early, we can chat about it. We can, kind of determine if it does go well in that direction in one of our opportunities, that sort of thing. And so, in order to just really quickly, are you all seeing my slides? Are you seeing my video?
Your slides seem to quit, so.
Oh, that is strange. Okay, let me get those back on there. Let's see if
looks good.
Okay, let's see if this will stay with me. So just wanted to first highlight the two main programs that are most relevant to this group over at IMLS. That's going to be the National Leadership Grants for Libraries, and then the Laura Bush 21st Century Librarian Program. National Leadership Grants for Libraries, you see I kind of highlight the pieces that are most important here. This has to do with building, the information and educational needs of the public. What can libraries, archives, other similar institutions do to better increase that kind of learning? And also this kind of third bullet here talks about kind of shared infrastructures. And I think that's what's, again, kind of most relevant to this group here is tools and services that can be shared across institutions, whether they're libraries or research centers or, kind of whatever we're talking about. That reinventing of the wheel over and over is something that we want to try to prevent as much as possible. The Laura Bush program is a little bit more specific in that we're very interested in the expertise of libraries and archives professionals. And this can actually be proposals that can go all the way from getting middle school or high school students interested in these kinds of topics through undergrad, then also formal education, master's and PhD programs, as well as continuing education. So, there's not enough AI understanding in academic libraries, that sort of thing. Okay, what can we do to get more of a baseline, raise that baseline across the country? So just to give you a sense of what we're talking here, we go from about $50,000, and you can apply for up to $1 million to implement a wide-ranging, scalable program. These are from 1 to 3 years, and again, can start with planning. Maybe it's your single institution is doing some planning. I have an idea. I've identified a need. Let's try to pull some people together to think about it. A forum, let's get different voices that are never, quote unquote, in the same room together to kind of explore an idea, give it a new twist, or full-scale research programs or implementation of an idea. We do also have an early career development research award. So if you or a colleague is an assistant professor in one of the I schools, library information science schools, that is also an opportunity there. I just did a quick search on our recent awarded grants page. This was just a quick search for, I think, artificial intelligence or, something like that. So just pulls up a couple of examples of the kinds of things that we can find. And again, just showing some examples. Notre Dame had the Press QT Award. They started with a planning grant, actually, and then they did the implementation grant about this collection of open source tools and data that were supposed to enhance software preservation services in libraries, that sort of thing. Another example, Drexel, they had first leads and then now leading. This is to build data science capacity in the library workforce. So they were looking at faculty members and then also kind of folks already working in academic libraries to increase that data science, get real hands-on techniques. So it turns out, you see, they have these community hubs. It was actually kind of great. Sometimes, the hub needed an expertise. So pairing up the expertise, folks trying to work on that expertise with folks who have a data set that they just don't have the time to be able to manage at the moment, that sort of thing, really pulling those things together. Indiana University, you may be familiar with the Shared Big Data Gateway for research libraries. Again, let's get some shared infrastructure so that some of these data sets that are widely available, but, it's just through an API. Most of the researchers don't know what to do with it, great to have access to, giant CSV file, that sort of thing. So trying to make things more user-friendly. And again, having multiple institutions be able to benefit right away. So this kind of came through the Big Ten Data Alliance. So kind of working at that level. Again, I have a whole bunch of other recent awards that could be relevant and that maybe are, having you think about reasons or ways that you may apply to IMLS. I will say that pretty much everyone on this call, I believe, is eligible to apply to IMLS. So if you're a college or a university, whether you're a liberal arts college, community college, really anything like that, if you have a library on your campus or you are a university, that's eligible. Public libraries are eligible. If you're not eligible, there's even ways to collaborate, and perhaps you're a sub-award, that sort of thing. So there's many ways to become eligible to apply to us across the country. And then I'll note that, we have our new director, and our new director is really interested in, say, how the average person, or say your average undergrad, how can they benefit from these federal funds? So I think that's another piece that I kind of keep in the back of my mind is, what kind of work that we could do that is not necessarily research for the sake of research, but in particular that we can really kind of pinpoint how this could make an impact on the average person. Again, let's say the average undergrad for this example, kind of earlier rather than later in terms of ensuring that national impact from our funds. So I'll stop there as just an example at this point. And we'll take any other questions as they roll along. As Laura mentioned, we're on about an annual funding cycle. So while the deadline just recently passed for this year, it's never too early to start calling us and chatting about what will probably be a September-ish deadline for next year. So thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Ashley. Always glad to see the library and information science world represented here. I know Martin has roots in that area as well, and there's been quite a lot of work in the data curation, data standards, data sharing kinds of activities in that world. And so I would encourage folks who are coming from other fields, computer science, other data science areas, to think about the iSchool and information science world as a natural partner to collaborate on some of these projects. All right, thank you all for staying on time. We do have a fourth panelist before we move to the Q&A section, Dr. Ann Stapleton from USDA-NIFA.
All right, I think we're ready. I'm just going to go through a few slides to give you a kind of a flavor of all of the many things that NIFA, the National Institute of Food and Agriculture, supports. So we have a broad range of different kinds of stakeholders. So we have about 1.9 billion allocated to us for this past year, and we provide a whole range of different kinds of support to researchers, to producers, to extension, and to students. So we manage capacity grants, which are sort of a kind of funds that flow directly to institutions to support ongoing projects. We provide competitive grants to support a whole range of things in research, extension, and education at various kinds of institutions. Land-grant universities, big ones and small ones, non-land grants, minority-serving institutions, community colleges, tribal colleges, lots and lots and lots. And eligibility varies by the program and is listed in each of our RFAs. It can be a bit of a slog to search through those. If you're a new investigator, our most up-to-date materials are actually for new investigators, and we have a whole set of videos about programs, and it's all in a searchable file that you can download from us. I wanted to start off by talking about the sort of, as Laura did, the sort of government-wide priority in artificial intelligence. So this is one of the things that informs the priorities for our programs. And we have our own agency, USDA priorities, which come from Secretary Vilsack and include equity and inclusion, climate and regenerative agriculture, rural economic revitalization, nutrition security, broadly considered, and open and competitive markets, and I'd say particularly the intersections between each of these priorities that are now being reflected in our programs. So let me just highlight a few programs, and then I can go through and talk more about any one of these that someone is interested in. And I have shared my slides with John, so all of the links will be available. This is just an image that gives you an idea of how many education and workforce development research programs and we support across the full range of all kinds of education and workforce development, from kindergarten to through adulthood and beyond. So we support research in teaching and research in application of data science, AI, and robotics. And so this is a priority in all of our education programs. There's a specific research and coordination integration network program called AFRI, DSFAS, and it's cross-cutting research that generates new knowledge in agriculture and in data science AI, again, very broadly defined. And there's another thing I wanted to highlight, which is the AI Institute for Climate Smart Agriculture, which is a joint program between NSF and NIFA. We actually have several of these joint programs with other federal agencies. I think we have the most with NSF. And I also wanted to mention two cross-cutting things that are incorporated into NIFA programs. The one that you're probably familiar with are the FAIR data standards, which are part of what you do when you put in a proposal. We expect these things to be part of what you do as part of the project that you're proposing. It should be fully integrated into your proposal and documented in a particular data management plan. We are also incorporating the new CARE standards for Indigenous data governance. This is not as widely known, but I wanted to point this out, and it's something, as these kinds of standards are developed by the data community, we incorporate these into our programs. So I've included the links with the slides. I think I'll actually stop here and ask if anybody has any specific questions about the programs. And if you do, we can take a look at some of the details. You're also welcome to reach out to me at any time, and I can put you in touch with the right person if I'm not that right person.
Great. Thank you very much, Anne. Thank you all to all the panelists. So we have plenty of time now for questions and discussion with our panelists. Do have one question already in the chat here from Prashad, who's a PhD student, asking about eligibility for institutions that do not have PhD programs. So teaching in universities, predominantly undergrad institutions. How do the agencies provide support where the main goal of the institution is instruction rather than research, for example?
So I can answer briefly. NSF is perfectly willing to accept proposals from teaching institutions. We encourage smaller institutions and people from them to put in proposals. So we would welcome applications.
And I think that you have specific programs. I don't know the names off the top of my head, but I think there are specific programs that are focused on developing faculty teaching opportunities and building capacity. So yeah, at NSF for sure there are those programs.
We have similar things at NIH as well.
Mm-hmm. Great.
And I'll just provide a sort of summary of my entire background, in that I worked on access to cyber infrastructure for all for, 20 years. And this data and AI emphasis is a sort of natural outgrowth of that. It's an opportunity to level the playing field. People at all kinds of institutions should get engaged in this area. There are resources available for everybody. It's just a matter of figuring out where your strengths are and how to leverage those. Okay, plug over.
Thank you for that. Prashad, did you want to follow up?
Yes, thank you so much for the answers and replies. I have another question, is there any project duration? Project duration should be 2 years, 3 years, like that?
I think if you're talking about, how long is the funding for various awards, I think that really depends. I guess the sort of median would be about 3 years, but it really depends based on the program.
Okay.
I think that's a absolutely good answer. I would very much say yes, it depends. There's a lot of variability in the length of particular programs and their sort of application cycles too.
Okay, sure. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I see Jim Wilgenbush had just your hand up there.
Yes, thanks. And thanks to all the panelists. That was a great panel discussion, and really appreciate the information that you shared. I represent within the hub the University of Minnesota, but I also sort of a trans-regional group that I'm a part of is the CI working group. And one of the other hats I wear is I'm vice chair of the Coalition for Academic Scientific Computations, or CASC. And we just had our spring meeting. And as part of that, we really identified 3 things that I would really be interested in your comments on, the panelists' comments on, that represent fairly significant challenges right now to our members within CASC. And I think also representing the CI working group, we see the same challenges. The first is around compliance and the increasing number of obstacles with respect to making data available and getting access to data, and the increasing concerns over compliance, many of which are certainly warranted. The second are challenges with respect to team science. And when we talk about those challenges, we actually talk about the need for team sciences, but also just the whole new set of challenges associated with them. The third is the staffing challenge, and that is, having staff that are literate in, many of the technical and also non-technical or soft skill components that are required to work in research computing or cyber infrastructure at large. And so we've identified those three areas. I wonder first if you might be able to suggest that we're on the right track, or maybe we're missing something in those three things, and then whether you specifically could point to ways in which your agency is helping to address those challenges. Sorry, a long question, but I hope that makes sense.
But a very good one. I can start, and certainly my colleagues can pile on. I think you are right on track. Those areas. I can absolutely say you are not alone in your group discussions about the challenges in those areas. In particular, well, every one of them is right on. The cyber infrastructural challenges, continuing to update technologies to, current standards and to take the best advantage of current opportunities. The expertise involved in maintaining both those systems and teaching in programs, to the new demands that are there in almost, every type of industry these days around data science. I think the space and the need is huge in universities right now to address these needs. I have seen so much development of curricular programs, new degree programs that each of them are very interesting to watch them sort of develop around the country. They sort of carve out their own particular angle on these topics and a way that they're going to be distinctive in this emerging vast space. I mean, because let's face it, data is so central to every activity in life these days that really there are an enormous range of needs and very specific disciplinary needs that vary by the disciplines in the different areas. And so it's a rich area. I think you're right on track. Many of our programs at NSF, and in particular in the Office of Advanced Cyber Infrastructure, are specifically targeted towards trying to address those needs. So I commend you for your group's work and the issues you've identified.
I can just chime in as well and say that I think that these are really important points. And I also like the framework that NSF is using about cyber infrastructure that is coupled to the concept of cyber infrastructure professionals and to your point about staffing. And I think there's also been broader conversations across the interagency world about really sort of hardening and formalizing this idea of data as infrastructure and what that means in terms of long-term stewardship from the federal government for these key research assets. And along with that, I think, is the opportunity to really grow talent around these, around the data assets in areas that you're talking about, like data preparation and data management and data reuse.
And again, this is part of that broader federal priority in AI. So there's a current working group actively soliciting comments through the Federal Register on compute resources and management and all that sort of thing that's going to be required as we pay more attention to the input of AI, which is the data. So I think all of these issues are cross-cutting for all agencies. And this is why, for example, in all of our many education research programs and workforce development programs at NIFA, we essentially have a global priority for this. We don't have specific programs. It's across all.
Yeah, and I'll just kind of confirm that it happens in a meta way in a lot of ways also. So, we really are supporting you considering team science, educating within your grant, making your materials available. But also, especially at IMLS, a lot of our awards are, how do we do better at these kinds of things? So kind of that meta-analysis or actively pedagogical, increasing the instruction, increasing the training of these literacies. So kind of at each level within your project, or that is the project, or kind of thinking about it from each of these different perspectives.
Thank you very much. Yeah, that's helpful. We fortunately had the SICE and the OAC directors speaking at our last meeting to give that insight from the NSF perspective. And NIST also is doing some interesting work in terms of trying to address the overall landscape that I'm sure you all are familiar with. But these are big topics for us, and I think until we sort of try to address them more head on, there'll be friction in ways that I think we should try to minimize.
There's going to be friction and confusion. The one bit of, this is just me personally, not an NSF-wide view, but I think the space and the range of topics and research that's needed is so vast. Carve out a space that, because you can't eat the whole elephant in one bite. You got to, take it in pieces. So, figure out some area that is the most relevant ones, the most of interest to your group, and tackle those is maybe, one way to come at it.
Yeah, that's great, Martin. Thanks. And we did have breakout sessions where we're really trying to consolidate basically the opinions of 97 members and prioritize some of those within each of the categories. So we'll get that, and we'll definitely share that with all of you if you're interested. We're working hard to finish that position paper.
One more thing I'd add about the agricultural area is that it's collaboration at the intersection between agriculture, data, AI, and underserved populations, rural, tribal, etc., is it's ready to scale. That's a great opportunity for everybody. Because it's more accessible and it's cross-cutting. So this is one of the reasons why we incorporate new standards, such as Indigenous data standards, into what we do, because we see this as something where there can be really productive collaboration set up in the coming years.
Thank you.
Great. I just put in the chat a link to that cyber infrastructure working group that Jim mentioned. So that is a collaboration across the 4 big data hubs, one of our national partnerships that we have on a monthly basis. So definitely encourage folks on the call who are interested in those issues to join that call. It's typically the first Friday of the month, so that's coming up next month very soon. One of the other sort of large-scale topics that you all addressed in your talks was AI. That clearly seems to be a focus area for the U.S. federal government at many agencies and very different levels. I wondered if anyone could speak to sort of interagency working groups, opportunities for folks who are outside the federal agencies to participate in those kinds of activities to help, with that two-way dialogue, understanding the federal priorities, but also understanding the needs of the research community, the needs of the folks who are doing that research on the ground.
Sure. Somebody with a faster connection to me could pop in the Federal Register notice for comment. It's open right now. So I do have rural internet. I sympathize with my stakeholders. So, and I'd say that the way that folks interact with the federal government is fairly similar across agencies, and it is a bit of a remove. So you need to kind of do a little proactively reach out to us. That's on purpose. That's part of the law. And we have these opportunities that we try our best to advertise to as many people as possible to provide comment in a more structured way at a specific time. This ranges from formal things like the Federal Register to challenge.org opportunities to smaller, more topic-specific stakeholder meetings and input that's open. But it is kind of up to you guys to find those and reach out to us. We have sort of some limitations in reaching out to you. I encourage everybody to sign up for all the things like the daily NSF and the NIFA events and all of them. That's how you find out.
Absolutely. And AI is, of course, one of the primary areas of research that NSF is engaging with these days. While there are many programs out there, just do a search in current NSF opportunities. One that I would call out as a sort of a key one these days is this the National Artificial Intelligence Research Institutes that is run by my colleague Jim Donlin, and so I'll call you guys out and just say, take a look at this. It is a fantastic opportunity, especially for collaborative efforts, which so much of AI these days depends on.
And I'll just kind of add in the more, in the more informal considerations, when you call us, when you chat about your project idea, that sort of things, we're the kinds of folks that sit on these interagency committees and are able to kind of then reflect back what you all are saying are the priorities, what you all are saying is really important. So even those informal pieces are really informing us when we then go and are talking to our colleagues.
And I would also just add maybe some context, which is that AI and machine learning, strictly defined, are obviously very important, and there's a large effort across the federal government to advance our capabilities in that space. And there's, sort of national competitiveness issues associated with that. But it's also, just an opportunity to give traction to many of the things that are broadly useful to data science. So things like thinking about infrastructure for large collaborative work, thinking about advanced computing technologies, thinking about broadening access to data. All of those things are, sort of more broadly useful to advancing data science writ large. So I think that's another way to think about what the impact of these conversations around AI could be.
Laura, you did that program not too long ago, if I'm not mistaken, that AI cyber training related rapid response turnaround thing. That was really interesting, very, very provocative program.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so we're looking in a couple of ways. As I mentioned, we're sort of looking at how to help our researchers make their data more AI and machine learning ready. And so one of the opportunities we had this past year was simply for our existing funded projects to find collaborations that would help make their data AI and machine learning ready, and give them support to test it and see really what's required. But we're also looking at this from a sort of more long-term perspective and thinking about how do we need to train people in the skills and competencies that would help them within a research activity, at the time that they're planning out their research and planning out how to collect or generate data. How can they think about making those data more accessible to AI and machine learning technologies? What skills do those people need? What sorts of capabilities do they need in terms of abilities to collaborate with other experts? And what information do they need at their disposal? So we're also sort of looking at this as a workforce issue.
A last point from me is that, I'm particularly interested in the, after the research products are generated, what mechanisms can we put into place that emphasize the fair open science capabilities of interoperation, reproducibility of results, the metadata that can be associated with both data sets and other research outputs, to make that's to advance the general landscape of ecosystems for research is a key area that I think we need to devote more time and attention to.
And just to kind of pull together a couple of strands that I was hearing my colleagues mention, diversity, equity, and inclusion is really something that's also very important to the administration and has been coming up, with our director and everything. So, you kind of mentioned before, oh, can I apply if I don't have that big office of sponsored projects? So I would say yes, we definitely are interested in being able to fund more institutions, not the same old folks over and over again. We really want to be able to expand that breadth. And I'll note that also includes Native American tribes and Hawaiian serving organizations. So we actually at IMLS, we have a very specific programs. The funds are set aside for Native American and tribal organizations. So if you or your colleagues, if that makes sense, then please, contact us and we can chat about those specific opportunities. And then, of course, tribes are always eligible to apply for our other awards also. So not forgetting the importance of the tribal and Native Hawaiian communities in this regard. Not forgetting the importance of liberal arts colleges, teaching colleges, community colleges. Community colleges are serving such a huge percentage of folks across the country right now. So when we're talking about these pedagogical gaps, really that's could be a way to really target more folks. And then I'll just kind of tie together, we're talking about how, if I want something to be machine readable, it's easier to do it from the start, right? It's easier to do it the life cycle when you're creating the data to make it fair rather than trying to fix it at the end, right? And I'll just do a plug for universal accessibility in the same regard. If we make our PowerPoints actually accessible from the start, it's not a big deal. It's the same things we've always done. So just kind of that reminder of pulling in all these aspects of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and confirming to everyone here, and I see my colleagues nod that it really is a priority in the agency. Yes, in fact, please make sure that the slides I sent you are 508 compliant if you distribute them. Forgot to say that. So we're supposed to put that disclaimer in everything we set out, that we would like to propagate 508 compliance outside of our agency as well.
Great. Thank you all for that input. We do have the largest concentration of tribal colleges and universities within the Midwest region, and so that's very relevant to a lot of our audience as well to hear about those programs. I know that NSF and NIH and NIFA all have programs that are focused on building capacity at those institutions, so we can help folks get connected in both directions there as well.
I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the CARE principles of, related to data and especially indigenous cultures. If you haven't looked into that, it's a major topic to be aware of.
Right. All right. Well, thank you all very much. We are pretty much out of time for this session. I did want to note that we do have a session starting in about 15 minutes with our priority area leads. These are the co-PIs and other leads of those specific priority areas, and we'll be talking about opportunities to get engaged with the existing work that we do. That'll be coming up next. We're using this same link, so you're welcome to stay on, anyone who is interested in that. But thanks again to all of our panelists. This was a really terrific overview of the sort of vast array of programs that are available at the federal level. There's so much happening in the data science and related areas that involve funding and programs that you have. And so really grateful that you've spent the time with us today to talk through those opportunities, and we'll look forward to connecting you to our communities going forward.